News right now. Hello and welcome to our special coverage of the Royal Tour here on 7 News. I'm Hugh Whitfeld. Joining me here are Michael Usher and Karina Carvalho in the coming minutes with unrivalled coverage of the Queen and King's visit to Australia. The Australian Federation Guard representing the three arms of the Australian Defence Forces, the Royal Australian Navy, the Royal Australian Air Force and the Australian Army lined up on the tarmac at Fairburn Base in Canberra, right next to the Canberra airport, where just in the last 15 minutes the King and Queen have touched down in Canberra for what is day 2 of the official program for their visit to Australia. In the coming hours they will spend time at the Australian War Memorial and at Parliament House, and we say good afternoon to Michael and Karina.
Hugh, thank you very much for that. Some lovely scenes there, and we're waiting for a few of the... There's a little bit of protocol involved in getting everyone in place, obviously, as we're seeing right now. But a beautiful day to arrive there in Canberra. And I think there's a special moment there too, where two of the young girls from the local schools are going to be presenting some posies there after a bit of the greeting of the defence and military line up there. And just waiting to see there where the King and the Queen eventually move to onto the War Memorial. Karina, good to be with you this morning, and Hugh also.
Yeah, good to be with both of you. It's a packed schedule. We know that the King and the Queen are flying in and out of Canberra today, as we can hear the crowd cheering them as they leave the airport to head to the Australian War Memorial. Hugh, what will the scenes be like once they arrive there?
Well, the Australian War Memorial is one of the locations in Canberra where the public has been encouraged to gather to capture a glimpse of their Majesties. They've done a pretty good job of getting those school kids. What a way to spend their Monday, getting off class, being bussed no doubt to Fairburn to line up and wait in the glorious sunshine to ensure that they can capture a moment for themselves of history. This is a day that they will remember for decades to come, the day that they got to miss class and head to the airport to see the King and Queen. And I reckon that there'll be people from right across Canberra who will have seen the images that we saw in Sydney over the weekend and will head to the Australian War Memorial and to Parliament House in the coming hours to make sure that they get to be a part of all of this as well.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it, Hugh? There are two public opportunities to meet the royals in Canberra today at 12:30 at the War Memorial, and then just after 2 o'clock at the forecourt at Parliament House.
Yeah, so they're mixing together some very public engagements where they'll get to meet and greet the public. Of course, having said that, we know that the King loves to go off script, and he did that yesterday in Macquarie Street outside the New South Wales Parliament, where it wasn't really on the schedule that he'd duck across the street and say hello, we say g'day, to the members of the public that were there lined up, and many of them got quite the surprise. And I think, you know, there is the very real chance that that may happen in Canberra somewhere today. But in terms of those public opportunities, the War Memorial and Parliament House. And then there will be very private meetings that occur at Government House throughout the afternoon, some other visits around the capital, and they are focusing on some of those subjects and campaigns that the King and Queen, with separate programs that will play out over the course of the afternoon, that they get to focus on. And of course one of those for the Queen is domestic violence. The King likes to focus on the environment and science as well. So pretty busy afternoon, to be honest.
Coming back to us in the studio now as we just lose that feed because they're on the move. Aviation nerd note, that's one of our new planes, by the way. Not even the Prime Minister's flown on that one a lot yet either. The new BBJs, the Boeing business jets that have been handed out to the VIP fleet for the King and Queen to travel between Sydney and Canberra on as well. Taylor Aiken standing by at the War Memorial. We had Annie Puller at the airport, but Taylor, they must be only a matter of minutes away from you.
Yes, it's only a quick drive from the Canberra airport, the RAAF base there, through to the War Memorial. There's not a lot of traffic in Canberra at the best of times, but they will be given a priority run right through to the War Memorial. The crowd is steadily building here. This is one of 2 public opportunities to meet the King. There's plenty of kids here as well, some whole classes here. There's kids from ages 5 right through to some Year 12 students that we can see up there. They've Packed here for almost, or at least over an hour now, with excitement building, ready to see the royal car arrive here at the War Memorial. There will be some ceremonial events initially. The King and Queen will lay floral tribute here at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in the Hall of Memory. There will also be a last post and a minute's silence observed there to mark the association and the partnership between Australia and Britain during times of war and conflict. The King and Queen will then also place a poppy each before they come outside, and that's when the crowd will get their moment to have a meet and greet with the King and Queen. Now, there's two sides here, so we are expecting them to split off and deal with one side of the crowd each. They will then walk down this hill here to that black memorial there, and that is the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander People's Memorial. And from there, a Navy sub-lieutenant will play the didgeridoo. From here, then it's to Parliament, where crowd is building there, and there that is also a public meet and greet. So a very busy schedule for the Royals here in Canberra, but so far the people of Canberra have embraced them. It is a work day here, a school day, but that seems to have gone out the window for their chance to meet the King and Queen. Guys?
Okay, Taylor Aiken there at the War Memorial. We will cross back to you when the royal couple arrive there. But let's go to Parliament House now, where Rob Scott is standing by, because of course the King and the Queen will be there later on this afternoon. Rob, there are several events planned for Parliament House.
Yeah, there are a lot scheduled here for the Royals in a very short amount of time. But before we get to that, I must mention that the weather here in Canberra today is glorious. Not a cloud in the sky, balmy 20 degrees, and that has really helped the crowds flock here to Parliament. You might be able to see just over my shoulder here, the crowds are starting to line up on the forecourt, on both sides of the forecourt here at Parliament House, hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal couple, knowing that this is likely to be a historic occasion for them. It is, as Taylor just pointed out, a school day, a work day here, but that has not stopped these people turning out in full force. Hard to know exactly how many people are here, but my best guesstimate, upwards, approaching 1,000 perhaps. We'll get the official figures from the police later today. But as you mentioned, a lot to pack in. The royal couple will arrive here in about an hour or so. They'll be treated to a ceremonial welcome, a full guard of honour, about 100 ADF personnel or in formation. We'll have a 21-gun salute just behind me here, and the King possibly will then inspect the troops. From there, it's inside. They'll sign the visitor book, and then it's a formal reception hosted by Anthony Albanese and his fiancée, Jodie Hayden. There'll be speeches from the Prime Minister, from the King and from the opposition leader. And then when that is all wrapped up and finished, they emerge once again. The King and the Queen will split up when they come out of Parliament House, and they'll shake the hands of these hundreds of Australians coming out here to hopefully say good day, perhaps get a selfie with them. So an historic visit. A lot of people here really excited about it.
All right, Rob, thank you. We'll be crossing back to you a fair bit, so just stand by your post there. Hugh from the desk, let's bring you in as well, Karina. Yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary that there are 1,000 people there already, and it's 2 hours out from when that public meet and greet will take place at Parliament House.
I can tell you from personal experience, I'd be much prefer to be in the sunshine in Canberra waiting for a couple of hours for a 20-second glimpse, because that's all you usually get, than standing in the rain and the cold.
And these are live pictures from the Australian War Memorial of the Governor-General Samantha Mostyn, with other dignitaries awaiting the arrival of the King and Queen. And as soon as they arrive there, we will continue to bring you those pictures. Hugh, I interrupted you.
Well, look, at the Australian Memorial, it will be there will be some pretty poignant moments, because they will lay a wreath and a floral tribute at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in the Hall of Memory, and the last post will be played as well. There'll be a minute's silence. Reveille will be played too. So you can see the King today wearing his service medals. Some of those are, of course, from his own service with the British Armed Forces when he was a younger man. Many of his medals as the Prince of Wales and now the King he wears in an honorary capacity, and in fact over the weekend, the Australian Defence Force honoured the King with further honorary ranks in the three main branches of the Australian Defence Force. And that flag that you'll see throughout the day with the six quadrants representing the six Australian states, that is the King's flag in Australia. And that's a tradition that was begun by his mother, the late Queen, during her reign. It is something that he has continued. At Buckingham Palace, we see the Sovereign flying above the palace or wherever the monarch is in residence, but when he is on the ground here in Australia, the King uses the King's flag for Australia.
It is his standard whilst he's here on tour. Hugh, having covered many of these, you know how intricate and detailed the protocol is. Every step is planned out and rehearsed. And I don't think he'd mind me sharing, but I spoke to the Prime Minister yesterday morning in Western Australia when I was there and interviewed him, and he was saying that he had to fly straight back from Perth to there yesterday, to Canberra yesterday afternoon, to rehearse. He said it's not often the Prime Minister of the country has to rehearse for anything. You rock up, it's a full schedule, you do what you do, but they had to get their positions right, where he and his fiancée Jodie were going to be standing, and at Parliament House specifically, obviously, but it's detailed.
It is detailed, and there is a lot of protocol. I think some people get a little bit overstressed when they know that the royals are coming, and we know that William and Harry in particular have liked in the past when things go wrong, and the Queen liked things to go wrong every now and then just to liven things up, and it kept things interesting. But they are absolute pros, obviously, at not just dealing with the protocol, dealing when something goes wrong, dealing with members of the public who can throw a surprise at them, throw a question at them, present them with something that might be a little bit weird and wacky. They deal with this all the time. It is their job, and they make it look very smooth.
It's really effortless for them. 12 years ago, I was fortunate enough to meet then Prince Charles and Camilla, and they are just so personable, and they are so good at small talk and at meeting strangers and finding something in common to discuss with them. They're really extraordinary at it, and at making the other person feel at ease, which I think is a real skill.
All it takes is one question. You know, they see a kid in school uniform, oh, you bunked off class. You know, they see someone who might be wearing an akubra today, they might ask how the farm's going. You know, they know just that one little question that makes someone feel like they've been valued and that the King is interested or the Queen is interested in what they might have to say. Camilla is his secret weapon in a way, because she has obviously grown up in quite rarefied spaces in England, but she does come to the role with a level of common, I guess, experience. This isn't something that she necessarily wanted. She wants to be with the King. This is a great love story. But if you look at some of the engagements, particularly where Camilla is alone, she's completely disarming. She's always up for a chat. She's the one that, if they're at a farmer's market on a visit, she's the one who'll be trying the cheese and trying the little bit of meat or whatever. She always has a go at making people feel very relaxed and at ease.
Right, Hugh, let's go over to Taylor Aiken now, who's at the War Memorial there in Canberra, standing by for the royal couple to arrive. Taylor, generally, I mean, it's a lot of curiosity. There's a little bit of celebrity involved in the royals as well. You've been speaking to some people there. Why have they turned out today?
Yeah, that's right, Michael. Look, I think it is to see the spectacle. They're intrigued by the King and Queen arriving in little old Canberra to see. Now, I do have Nick here. He is a Canberra resident and has come down to see it all unfold. What are you hoping to get out of being here today?
You pretty much hit the nail on the head there, Taylor, mostly to see the spectacle. Personally, I'm not much of a royalist, but I'm intrigued to see who's turning out and how the Charles and Camilla will act.
And do you think that it's interesting to see how many people are here? Are you surprised by the number of people here?
A little bit, yeah. I suppose it's probably tracks about right, though, I'd say.
How does Canberra, do you think, feel about the royals? Do you think that that's played into this turnout here? Do you think that, or it's more intrigue?
Canberra's a bit of a left-wing utopia, so I think it's a little bit divisive. I tend to sit on the left side of the fence, so that's what I'd say.
And you're meant to be at work, you're heading back there. What made you, I guess, want to skip work and come down here? A bit more exciting?
Yeah, I suppose, Charlie's probably on the way out, so maybe see him while I can, see what's going on. I saw the Dalai Lama once, now I see the King, and who knows what's next.
Add to your list.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Michael and Karina, a bit of intrigue here, I would say, down in Canberra, and some kids that are sort of questioning why they're here at all. But hopefully the excitement builds as they come.
Dragged on. They'll remember it in years to come, I think, Taylor. Hey, let's go straight over to Mark Riley, who's sitting up on the hill there in Parliament House in his left-wing utopia. Mark Riley, that just about describes it. An honest person in the crowd there.
Described, I think. Very accurately described after the ACT elections at the weekend and 23 years of Labor government here. There's great anticipation in Parliament House today. The monarch's coming to visit. Anthony Albanese, of course, met the King in London and has met him on 2 occasions in his visit here so far. There's always a great and deep respect between Australian Prime Ministers, irrespective of their political allegiances and their beliefs about a republic or otherwise, and the monarch, the head of state of Australia, and that certainly continues with Anthony Albanese. He says this is a man who he respects very deeply, and they share interests in a lot of political causes. Of course, Prince Charles is quite an activist on the environment. I remember hearing him speak at the COP, the climate change conference in Glasgow in 2021, where he asked the world leaders to engage on a war footing to address the issue of climate change, and said that he wanted a military-style campaign run by our corporate leaders at the same time, because he thought this was the last chance saloon, really trying to encourage international leaders to take greater steps on climate change, something that's very close to Anthony Albanese's heart. So I think that there's a lot to discuss. This is a man who has a very deep affection for Australia, but not just Australia, our system of government as well, which is a system of a parliamentary democracy based on the Westminster system. That was an intriguing speech he gave yesterday at the New South Wales Parliament, talking about the need for the Westminster democracy to continue to evolve, to ensure that it remains relevant. And it's so here we are. There's a motorcade coming up Anzac Parade towards the War Memorial. The orientation of that for people who visited Canberra, probably a lot of people say they haven't visited since they were in school, but it's a wonderful place to visit, folks, and this is one of the places you really want to come to. There's a big renovation going on there now. It's an enormous and a very proud national monument, the War Memorial. And when you look up there, up Anzac Parade, over the lake, Burley Griffin, and the old Parliament to the new Parliament, there's a clear line of sight up that avenue from the Parliament to the War Memorial. And if you open the doors of the Parliament right through the Great Hall to the Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister can sit there and look up that vista and see the War Memorial, to be reminded of the primary duty of the holder of that office. So it's something of an obligation for monarchs when they come to Australia to visit the War Memorial, because it is such a place of deep cultural relevance to our country, Michael.
It's an incredible piece of architecture, the way that Capitol is laid out there, with that great significance of the PM's view right up to the memorial. And actually, Mark, you referenced there too this incredible, I think it's a $400 million renovation of the War Memorial. I wouldn't be surprised if down the track, when it does finally open, they might invite the King back to officiate over that as well.
Yeah, that may well happen. It'd certainly be appropriate. It's an enormous renovation going on there now. The great thing about the War Memorial is there's so much of our military history there on display, and so much of it that isn't and hasn't been. And there's a warehouse in the north of Canberra with a lot of the artefacts of war that could now be exhibited in the new hall at this great memorial, designed by Charles Bean, the official war historian from the First World War. There they are now. There's Queen Camilla arriving on the forecourt of the War Memorial. A glorious Canberra day. We only have glorious days here, of course.
Mark, let me butt in there. What's the protocol we're watching here of Camilla in the front seat? Is that security in the back with Charles? Is it the fellow who just got out quickly? Yeah, it is.
Not my strong suit, Michael, but what wonderful act of deference by His Majesty to take a back seat to his wife. I think that could be something, an example for all.
I think it was the same.
Camilla called shotgun.
I think we saw the same car
Exactly.
layout, the same passenger layout when they arrived in Sydney on Friday night. Maybe, Hugh, you might have some
The Governor-General just meeting there
too,
by the way.
Governor-General Sam Austin and her husband Simeon Beckett, they're greeting the monarchs as they walk up towards the opening the forecourt of Parliament House. Matt Keane, the Minister for Defence Materiel. Kim Beazley, of course, Chair of the War Memorial and former Governor of the state of Western Australia and former opposition leader there, and a great military historian. His wife, Susie Annis. Matt Anderson next to Susie there, who is the Director of the War Memorial, meeting the King now, and his wife.
A lot of handshaking on this tour, Mark Riley, as you'd expect. And Sam Mostyn leading the way with the conversation and the introductions there as well. This would be, how long has our new Governor-General been in the role? This is obviously her largest function to guide the dignitary through.
Yeah, only a matter of months, only since July, Michael. So, yeah, it's a big moment for the Governor-General. There are only few Governor-Generals who greet reigning monarchs to Australia. It's a big moment for Governor-General Sam Mostyn and Simeon Beckett. Now, walking up to the entrance of the War Memorial through the pool of reflection there, people who've been there will know on the left-hand side you have the long corridor with the poppies alongside the names of those who've been lost in various battles, and the Hall of Remembrance at the back.
Mark, I wanted to ask you about the 6 premiers from the states who were all invited to Canberra today to meet the King and Queen. We seem to have lost the pictures there. OK, they're back. Is that being considered a royal snub?
Well, yes, by some. I think there are state and federal politicians who've been invited to the reception, Karina, in the Great Hall here today. I don't think there's an obligation, frankly, it's a personal view on political leaders to accept a recommendation or an invitation, to come to such an event. And I think they each need to answer for themselves if they don't arrive today. We have an obligation and a system of government that runs through to our head of state, and this gentleman here is our head of state, so we need to show due respect, irrespective of personal political allegiances. And I think each of those premiers and leaders who don't arrive here today, who were invited to this reception, need to answer for their absence.
Hugh, if I can bring you in on that point, how is that decision being received by the UK press?
I think the British press that's travelling with the King have kind of latched onto it as a bit of a royal snub. They don't really understand why the premiers couldn't make the effort to go to Canberra. They are obsessed with republicanism, the British press. They are obsessed with anything that might derail the King's visit. But for the most part, I think the palace probably kind of moves on pretty quickly because they can't control the script from democratic governments, and if Australia heads down a Republican path, the palace won't be trying to block it. They understand how the world works.
But that isn't something that is being considered at any point. We've even seen the Prime Minister, who had an Assistant Minister for the Republic, in a reshuffle abolish that position.
Absolutely. I mean, Mark will be able to talk to this more, but politically, the Albanese government just isn't in a position clearly now to call another referendum that it might lose.
Mark Riley, just back on you, I know you're still listening into this. The significance of the King's visit here, he's on his way to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa. Was it a convenience that he come through Australia, or was it a priority on his list in his new reign as King to get here?
I think it was a priority, and I think it was for him a happy convenience that he would be flying into this part of the world for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa. But I think he made it clear very early on when he ascended to the throne that he wanted to visit Australia. This is a man with a deep passion for Australia. I think that's absolutely true. 17th visit here. We know the great stories of him at Timber Tops and at Bondi Beach and the rest of it. All that's kind of a bit superficial, but his connection isn't. It is a deep connection. He has a great love for the Australian people, and I think he was looking forward to this visit. And I think, Michael, it's really a demonstration of that he's come at the time that he has, while he's still continuing this cancer battle.
Just could we have one pause here, I wonder, in our commentary? Do we have audio of what is happening inside here, or is there just some natural sound that we could listen in on here? There's no audio there? All right, well, we've certainly sort of listen. Appropriate there, obviously, that we pause for this incredibly significant and sombre moment there in front of the tomb and the last post and the minute's silence. Hugh Whitfeld, obviously a moment that His Majesty has gone through many, many times in his official duties over his course as Prince and now King. It's still always incredibly moving and emotional.
We're obviously so familiar with it. On Anzac Day, the last post, a minute's silence, and then Reveille. For the Royals, it's a yearly tradition for them to go to the Cenotaph in London on Whitehall on Remembrance Sunday, which is the Sunday closest to the 11th of November. In the later years of her life, the late Queen obviously had to watch on from the window overlooking from the old War Office because she wasn't well enough to climb the steps of the Cenotaph and walk backwards back down, because you will have noted when they laid the wreaths there, they did not turn their backs on the tomb of the unknown soldier. And of course, Kim Beazley, the chair of the Australian Memorial, continuing his tour now with the King alongside Matt Anderson, who is very familiar with the Royals as a former Deputy High Commissioner in London. So we'll have visited Buckingham Palace and Clarence House over the years a lot. From here, they'll move on to the commemorative courtyard. Inside the War Memorial, they'll sign the visitors' book, as the King will have done, as Prince of Wales, as his mother will have done on her visit in 2011, her last visit to Australia.
And so we just want to let viewers know that sometimes we're losing the picture or the picture is going grainy, and that's because there is a huge media contingent that is following this royal tour. Sometimes the lines do end up getting overwhelmed, and we will always try to find an alternative shot that we can bring you.
There's an interesting bit of background of the development of the Australian War Memorial. I mean, it was built in a time of austerity and built pretty quickly, but necessary to remember all of our fallen soldiers and those who'd served. And it's taken us many, many decades to get to the point of actually renovating the whole thing at a tune of, some $400 million. At one point, I spoke to one of the directors there a few years back, and he said he really worried when there was a lot of tourists in one of the rooms. The floors just weren't strong enough and built strong enough. But that one centrepiece there of the War Memorial that the King and Queen were just standing in was built beautifully and with gorgeous architecture and all the right significance that it needs to remember our fallen.
And these are the pictures that will go around the world, some of the most poignant
Absolutely.
shots.
Ultimately opened in 1941 during the Second World War. A memorial to the First World War opened during the Second World War. It's a horrible coincidence. The honour rolls that walk up to the Hall of Memory where the tomb of the unknown soldier is carry the names of more than 103 Australian veterans, many of course who will have served alongside British soldiers, Commonwealth soldiers in both the First and Second World Wars. Anyone who has been to the Western Front in France, in the Somme, in Belgium and Northern France will know the significance that our sacrifice, as our nation's sacrifice, played in the First World War. And obviously when Australians go to Anzac Cove in Turkey, that connection with those conflicts goes on.
And history that keeps on resurfacing. Hugh, only 2 weeks ago there was another bomber found in the water off Papua New Guinea of lost RAAF crewmen who have only just recently been found again and now remembered.
And as we learnt on D-Day this year, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, only a handful of Australians still around who were on board some of those RAF bombers, whether they were flying over on as part of that D-Day campaign, or one of the Australians we spoke to was flying back.
I wonder if Kim Beazley seems to have stopped at a certain point here, pointing out some names. He's a wonderful defence and war historian, Kim Beazley, and I just wonder whether he's found some significance in a few of the names there. And there we go, the King putting a poppy in the wall there.
So the King is placing a poppy alongside the name of Private William Punch, who was an Indigenous soldier in the First World War, one of very few Indigenous soldiers who were allowed to sign up and serve alongside their white comrades and made it very clear that he was an Indigenous soldier. The Queen placing a poppy alongside the name of Private William James Johnson, who was killed in action in Greece. And from here, of course, they're going to head to the Australian and Torres Strait Islander Memorial on Anzac Parade following this visit to the Australian.
That's called For Our Country.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was a sculpture that was designed in 2018 by the First Nations artist Daniel Boyd.
Could we have a little listen in here too, because the King was making some commentary there.
So a 50-year-old, one of our First Nations, Private William Punch, whose family were killed. That means that they hadn't been captured yet. They could have been actually making their way to the rest of the front. Anything could have happened. But we do it by service. So Navy first, then the Army, and then into the Air Force and Flying So Australia's population, First World War, was 4 million people, 460,000
A few words there, just reflecting and some hand gestures. I'd imagine, like many of us, Karina and Hugh, no doubt remarking on the number of names, the size of loss and sacrifice as those walls often evoke with all the names. If any of you have been fortunate enough through relatives or in your travels to go to our war graves and cemeteries around the world, it is something incredibly symbolic to run your fingers over the names of those people etched in tombstones and in bronze on walls. It's like living history. You can really feel it.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, and particularly if you do go to those cemeteries in France and Turkey, it is overwhelming, the age of the young men, and they were mainly young Australian men who died in battle, and the distance from home. That's the thing that always struck me, is that these young men were so far from home and they sacrificed everything.
And we're seeing now King Charles signing the book there at the War Memorial.
That would be the visitor's book, is it? Or is it
the visitor's book, yeah.
No issues with the pen.
He has had a few issues with pens over time, hasn't he? A little bit of frustration. The Queen also now signing that book.
Good Australian pen.
These pictures just really are so stunning, so poignant, so significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, to be honest, at a lot of these events, everything is around the imagery. The photographers, particularly the British photographers, will be in the perfect place to get the perfect shot, lined up to get that symmetry, particularly at a spectacular building like the Australian War Memorial. These visits are pretty quick. They're only, barely 10, 15, 20 minutes long, but they are definitely visits that leave a mark.
So for our viewers tuning in now, Hugh, I mean, this is probably the most significant day of the King and Queen's visit so far in terms of symbolism and going to Canberra. Because of his health, time has been factored into the general schedule, and some downtime we saw when they arrived Friday night. Saturday was essentially a rest day. Church yesterday morning. But today's business. Yeah,
I think when we were looking back at the planning of this tour 12 months ago, let's say, I think there was bids put out to the Australian states, wasn't there, to see who could put forward the best program to Canberra to try and get the King to come. Ultimately, as being his first visit to Australia as the monarch, he had to go to Canberra. He had to visit the nation's capital. He had to go to the War Memorial. He had to go to Parliament House. The Sydney stuff is a bonus that New South Wales has stored.
Oh, let's have a listen here. He's going to go over and greet a few of the royal watchers, as Taylor's been saying, have been standing by for a while. Let's have a listen in.
Yeah. And then we're all together, farther away.
Lining up, waiting for hours at the Australian War Memorial. This is one of the designated public meet and greets that was scheduled to take place there. So lots of young people in the crowd. Let's listen in.
I am 43 years, still serving. Indeed, served with Apple Lawrence. Not yet. Hello. You like it? You like it? Fine, mate.
The general hubbub of the whole. Oh, there's a beautiful bouquet there. Look at the size of that. Someone's gone to a real effort there to hand over a beautiful bouquet.
And I loved that yesterday, that one gentleman handed Camilla a bunch of flowers that he had grown in his garden.
Yeah, and some of those private protection officers are going ahead of the King and Queen, just looking in the bags. What have you got there? What are you going to hand over?
I just saw that exact moment, actually.
Exactly,
yeah.
Just to make sure that there's nothing a bit weird or wacky or dangerous that's going to be handed over to the King or Queen.
Hugh, describe that gentleman there in the beard. He's always just one step away from the King, and we've seen that. I don't know whether when he was Prince, but certainly since he's been King, that gentleman seems to be his closest of protection officers.
He's been there since day one, and he's never been named publicly by the palace, but he is by the King's side as a bodyguard, for want of a better word, at pretty much every engagement. And I think, for the most part, principals, as they're called, the King, the Queen, the princes and the princesses, they have people that they like working with because they feel comfortable, and that's important because they're thrown into some pretty weird situations sometimes, and he's clearly someone that the King trusts.
One of his main jobs, I've noticed, is just gently guiding people's hands down if they've got a phone in the King's face. He just sort of sweeps them out of the way politely a bit.
I think there's some expectation management that goes on. Okay. You might not get to give him a hug, but say g'day for sure.
There's a good crowd there, Hugh and Karina.
That's what I was trying to work out, how many people might be there at the War Memorial.
Well, it goes 4 or 5 deep in some places by the look of it. I think I spotted a William and Kate flag that someone had put on a bit of a pole as well. So royal watchers from all over. And the thing is, if you are someone who has followed this family for decades, this is your chance to see Charles and Camilla as King and Queen for the first time, because a trip to London doesn't work for everybody. But this is a real chance to see something special.
But we've even seen over the last day people from the UK, from England, who have never met the King and Queen before, were able to yesterday by coming all the way to Australia.
It's so weird, isn't it? I mean, the thing is that particularly in the UK, if you're in London and you're outside Buckingham Palace, okay, chances are you might see them go past. But in other parts of the UK, they're not going to necessarily come to your community. There's a good chance they will, but you might not get to see them. This is such a fantastic opportunity for Australians to be part of something special. There will be people who have planned this for weeks, and then there will be people who have woken up this morning and decided, you know what, let's go.
It's a cute little moment for that mum and her bub there. They've been, two babies there standing out in the sun for quite a while, getting ready to meet. There'll be a photo that they will treasure for some time to come. Just reading online, certainly out of our camera shot at the moment, there was a small protest outside the War Memorial where a gentleman was arrested. There were some Indigenous protests, about 24 of them, voicing, their certain views on the royal couple and their visit. But that was certainly out of our camera shot that we haven't seen, but certainly online they're reporting that at the moment. So I think there was a poster in the background of some kind that we saw briefly there about my country as well. As to be expected, there's different views about the royal family, support and otherwise. Is that a beautiful bunch of wattle that she has received?
That's certainly what it looks like. And we know that when the King and Queen touched down on Friday night, and as they walked down off the plane, Queen Camilla had the wattle brooch on that belonged to Queen Elizabeth II that had been gifted to her by the Australian people and the Australian government ahead of her tour to Australia in 1954. Yeah. It's one of those pieces of jewellery that Queen Elizabeth treasured and wore on numerous occasions, and now Queen Camilla has been wearing it as well. And so I think those are those sort of little touches that the palace is so keen on. I know that some fashion watchers have been wondering if she's going to step out in any Australian labels. That hasn't necessarily happened. I should ask both of you, being such fashion experts.
No, well, look,
sartorial.
I'd let you down on that front, I guarantee you. But Hugh knows these things inside out. There's quite often a piece of jewellery's chosen for a statement too, not just a nice goodwill gesture like this one is. Absolutely. Quite often a piece of another royal's jewellery worn at a certain time says something.
That's right, and the late Queen was an absolute pro. I think it was one of her first state openings of Parliament in the UK where she wore a hat that was blue with yellow flowers soon after the Brexit vote, which was taken as a bit of an implicit jibe that you should have stayed in the EU. And then we saw after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Queen, when she was ill, she just recovered from COVID, and Justin Trudeau was visiting her at Windsor Castle, and there was a vase of flowers in the background with blue and yellow flowers, clearly supporting Ukraine. So there's always little messages to be found in whether it's the flowers, the clothes, a brooch, there's always something.
Symbolism.
It's a nice touch with all the flowers that are given too, because I'm sure it's the same tradition here. We don't have many royal visits, Hugh, but in the UK, because they're given so many, I know that they're then taken away to various hospitals and places and given there. They're not just disposed of.
Yeah, no, that's right. And look, the King and Queen and other members of the royal family, like the Prince and Princess of Wales, in the UK, they will spend a day in a community and it often includes a visit to a church, and then they'll walk outside and do what used to be called a walkabout, now meeting and greeting members of the public. And it's an important part of the outreach that they need to undertake to ensure that people feel connected with the monarchy and with the palace. That can sometimes feel a bit out of reach for a lot of people, but this shows that they are real people. You can see them.
Let's just try, I don't know whether she can, well, she's on camera, but if Taylor Aitken can hear us, I know that she's in the crowd, she might give us a bit of a first-hand perspective, at least on her microphone, at least, of what people are feeling, hearing, saying there. Taylor, can you hear us?
Hi guys, yes. Yeah, well, it's really just anticipation. The King is really taking his time walking down that initial ramp down to where the main crowd is here. You can probably see from my camera now everyone reaching over the top with their phones trying to get a shot if they're not on the barrier here. Here we're about 10 rows deep here, so there's plenty of people packing in trying to see them. Now if I just crane over, they're still together. Now when they reach both sides of this runway here, this roadway, we do expect them to split off. So one will go to one side, the other will go to other, just to make sure that everyone gets their chance to see the King and Queen. They are getting closer, so we might go back to you and then come back when they're actually with the crowd here.
I think your cameraman's competing with the selfie cameras at the same time. It looks like there's a bit of movement there. I mean, there's a schedule to keep here too, Karina and Hugh, about getting this moving, because there's a bloke called the Prime Minister standing at the top of the hill waiting to receive him as well, isn't there?
Absolutely.
It is such a tight schedule, and part of that, Hugh, would be because of this pared back visit and tour, because of King Charles's cancer treatment, there are no evening events. So everything has to be done within these daylight hours, and so it is, even though it's fewer days, fewer events, the time that they are out and about, they're just working their way through all of the events very quickly.
Yeah, it's pretty compact, and everything is also being done in consultation with the doctors as well. The doctors, whether they're
that's a good shot.
or travelling.
Good shot there. This is going over to where Taylor Aitken was just talking to us from, actually. Let's see if she can get a good view. Let's have a listen in, actually.
Well, Michael, plenty of excitement here. Everyone wanting either a shot or a quick handshake, unless you're not on the railing here. The King wearing some sunglasses. It is bright and sunny here in Canberra. It's quite warm as well. King Charles, how are you enjoying Canberra?
Yes.
Are you enjoying Canberra, King Charles?
You would always believe me.
How long before Taylor's microphone gets quietly passed away? Have a listen though.
John's birthday. Many happy. I do hope you get home in time.
Are you enjoying Canberra?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I know it quite well.
Thank you very much.
Nice and sunny for you.
Slightly sunnier than Sydney.
It's certainly sunnier than Sydney, is what King Charles just said to Taylor.
There's the 7 News exclusive.
There we go. Good on you, Taylor. You got the microphone in there. We'll call that an Australian exclusive at this stage. I think, if you don't mind, a 7 News exclusive. A good-humoured King there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're kind of seeing with this is kind of how the sausage is made, because when I've written stories about the royals over the years, we don't necessarily show all the chaos that goes around these meet and greets with the people along the railings. There's at least 2 cameras following throughout today. One of them is from the UK, one of them is from Australia, and those snappers as well.
Hey, Taylor, have you got some people there with you that just had a quick word to the King?
Yes. Can I speak to you? You saw the King. How do you feel?
I'm actually shaking.
Did you expect to get that close?
No, I didn't. I just sort of like snuck my way through and then I just shoved my hand in.
What? So you shook his hand? How does that feel?
Hand. Incredible. Never washing it.
Why do you want to come down today?
I don't know. Well, Grange is a bit of a royalist, so we sort of came to support him.
Did you get to shake the King's
I didn't get to shake the King's. That was very close, though.
She took your moment.
I know. I let her have it, though. It was just a pleasure to see him. I'm very honoured to see him.
How do you feel after seeing the King?
Amazed. Everyone in my family has seen a royal before, so I just need to tick that one off. And to see a king, amazing.
My grandma will cry. She'll be bawling.
Yeah.
She'll be very excited.
She'll be bawling for me.
Well, there you go, guys. Plenty of excitement here. She's never washing her hand again.
And Mum will be in tears. So we've made Mum happy today too.
They're doing it for their families and their grandparents.
Here we go back to a shot here too, the King and the Queen just slowly making their way down the line. And they're stopping for a bit of a longer chat here as well. They've been handed something there by the look of it. What's he got in his hand? Oh, look at the lady on the left there. She's got a tin full of biscuits or a cake or something. Perhaps a bit of baking for the royal family. I'm not too sure they can accept food in any capacity. They'd be pretty careful about that. But it is a bit of organised chaos. And Hugh, there is, I'm sure I read, and you know this stuff inside out, that in those events where they're indoors, there is a protocol where the big microphones we use, the boom poles and things like that, aren't necessarily allowed. You're not allowed to poke the mic in all the time. So.
Yeah, boom poles where the mic is hanging on a pole and kind of reaching in aren't allowed, but there is what we call in the industry a top mic, so there's a microphone attached to the camera, so you don't need a reporter there, so we can hear that, and they know that there are cameras around them all the time. They know that things that they say are going to be heard and maybe amplified beyond that space that they are in at that time.
So Hugh, will they make their way along all of the queues of people at the War Memorial, or because the schedule is so tight, will they break away to get to the next event on time?
Are they trying to pull him away?
No, have a look at this moment. I think he's encouraging him because he's dressed in a full suit of Union Jacks and he's wearing a crown.
Oh,
so
wow.
when this meet and greet happens in about 2 more handshakes time, I'm going to have a look at the King's reaction here. I hope the camera doesn't move away. Here we go. Quick point.
It's that point. It's that point, which is a Charles signature. It's playing with the pocket on his jacket and the point just to...
Is that a friendly gesture?
I think so. I think so, yeah.
We've just dispatched Taylor Aiken to go and find the fake Prince Charles in the crowd there and see if she can get a quick interview with him. He's certainly gone all out, and now he's getting his own shots on his phone camera as well.
The thing is that the palace staff around him would probably get a little bit frustrated because he loves this. It's going to be a real effort to drag him away. If there's still people to see, they don't want to disappoint anyone. So they're going to spend time there.
Do you know, it reminds me, Hugh and Karina, when we were covering his mother's funeral in London, and obviously not a lot of those movements were scheduled or known or spoken about publicly, but on the banks of the Thames opposite Westminster Palace, he stopped one afternoon with William, I'm pretty sure, and they got out and did a meet and greet like this, and it was a magically warm moment.
It was that line of people waiting to pass by Her Majesty's coffin inside Westminster Hall that had snaked along the Thames at Lambeth there, near Lambeth Palace, and it was an impromptu moment. They'd just been to visit the Metropolitan Police security headquarters, planning the huge security operation ahead of the funeral, and whether or not there was a discussion in the car, like stop the car now and let's get out, or they'd had about an hour to prepare, but they always want to spend as much time as they can with members of the public, and if they can surprise someone, even better.
And so there is room for that? It doesn't all need to be pre-planned much more than, say, an hour in advance?
From a security perspective, these planned events where people know that it's going to happen are actually harder to manage from a security perspective. The impromptu meet and greets are actually easier because those people who are there, it's by chance.
Taylor, we're going to come back to you now at the War Memorial because you have a special guest with you.
I do. This is Linton. He has come all the way from Melbourne. Did you manage to meet the King?
I did, and I got to shake his hand. It was a dream come true,
How do you feel?
Ecstatic. I've loved the royals since I was young, so to be able to meet His Majesty the King, it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
And talk us through your outfit. It's incredible.
Well, when you go over to Britain, you see lots of pride, pomp, pageantry, colour, passion. So I thought I want to give the King and Queen a bit of their homeliness, a bit of a welcome home to Australia. So yeah, that's me.
And what's this here?
This is from Balmoral Castle, so it's actually a Christmas ornament, but I've multi-purposed it, put it on my suit, and it's there for all to see.
And what did the King say to you? Anything?
He did say something, but I'm just a bit of a blur at the moment. I can't remember what he said, but it was just an absolute honour to meet him, so yeah.
And why did you want to come all the way from Melbourne? Were you hell-bent on meeting them?
Well, you don't know what's around the corner. He's 76, he's not the best in health, and If you've got dreams to do something, just go and do it. No point waiting to see what could happen. Maybe I should wait. I should do this, I shouldn't do that. Just go and do it. If you want to do something, do it.
Great advice, great advice. Did you meet the Queen, or is this your first royal?
This is my first monarch. I did see Harry and Meghan when they came to Melbourne about 6 years ago, but the King Charles, and to go to his coronation too, so I feel attached to him now.
Absolutely. Well, Linton, thank you so much for your time, and the guys, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, Taylor, thank you.
Well, it's so interesting that Linton has travelled from Melbourne to Canberra to see the King and the Queen, and obviously he met King Charles just then, because initially this tour was to try and take in more cities, but then places like New Zealand, places like Melbourne ended up getting left off the itinerary because of the pared back tour. And I think Camilla even apologised to some members of the public yesterday for not travelling to Melbourne this time around.
Well, when the late Queen made her first visit to Australia, of course, it lasted weeks and weeks. That was a different time, visits to regional areas, all the capitals. This is a different monarchy and a different aged king who has ascended the throne in his 70s and obviously now has cancer. So things have had to be a bit pared back. As we said, Canberra had to be on the schedule. Sydney is the lucky winner of the state's draw of potential places where the King and Queen could visit. But if you're going to go anywhere, why not Canberra? Because it's a great day and pretty easy to get to.
And if you're dedicated like Linton, you get on a plane or a bus, or you drive your car or your electric scooter or whatever you do, and you get to Canberra to meet the King. I tell you what, he went to some effort there, and I love the fact that he's using a Christmas decoration as a brooch.
Well, if you go
I've got one of those Christmas decorations.
The souvenir shops outside Windsor Castle, they're full of them.
What's happening here, Hugh? This is some of the open lawn out to the right of the War Memorial there. I guess a very good chance for... I think this is where Taylor was referring to more of the crowds were, so walking down the middle there so that...
I think they're going to have to skip past a few people and head to that For Our Country Memorial, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Memorial, which is further down Anzac Parade in Canberra. So, look, those people have been waiting for a while. They're going to be a little bit disappointed, but at least they saw them.
This looks like thousands of people.
This does look like thousands of people, and no doubt thousands more waiting at Parliament House as well in the forecourt there.
Oh, here we go. Let's just have a listen into this.
Being played there at the For Our Country Memorial, which is to recognise the military service of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This sculpture was commissioned in 2018. It was designed by First Nations artist Daniel Boyd, who's from North Queensland. He also has Vanuatu heritage, and I believe that's probably what's being explained to the King and Queen now?
They're being escorted by Auntie Lorraine Hatton OAM, who was an Australian Army veteran and a council member at the Australian War Memorial. That was Navy Sub-Lieutenant Jordan Bradshaw, who was playing the didgeridoo upon their arrival at their memorial. It's a memorial that doesn't just recognise the sacrifice of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander servicemen and women in wars fought in modern Australia, but also pre-white settlement too.
This is one of the great moments. I know there was criticism of the renovation of the War Memorial and the money spent on it, but one of the things it is doing, as Mark Riley referenced earlier, is including a lot more of the broader conflicts Australia's been involved with, not just the significant periods of war, but also all of the Indigenous Australians who've represented Australia and served and made their sacrifices as well. A lot more space and effort in recognising all of their various efforts and commitments to Australia.
And we can see just how many people are there lining this area waiting for their glimpse of the King and Queen.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, this is a good example. There's plenty of Australians who probably didn't even know that this memorial existed, and this is the sort of power that they have by highlighting issues, places that maybe don't get as much exposure as they should. And here we are talking about this memorial because the King and Queen have shone a light on it.
Talking to Jordan Bradshaw there, who played the didgeridoo, I thought that was a fantastic and very simple, very powerful moment there for the King and Queen, and good work on the didgeridoo as well. Obviously a decorated Navy man there, Jordan.
So it's a sculptural pavilion that they've just walked through. There's a circle of stones there and that ceremonial fire pit as well, all forming part of that For Our Country memorial.
And Daniel Boyd has received several commendations for this particular artwork.
It's a spectacular spot, clearly, and just down those lawns from the Australian War Memorial.
Now, from that incredibly sombre moment, I think Taylor Aitken has been in the crowd searching out a few more colourful characters. Taylor, I don't know if you can hear us. Give us a shout if you can, and we might head back to... What? Sorry.
Oh, wow.
What do you have there, Taylor?
Well, this is Hefner the alpaca, and he has met the King. Talk us through his meeting with the King.
Yeah, so I got to shake the King's hand. He walked up and I think he was in disbelief when he saw Hefner. He gave Hefner a pat on the head and then he sneezed on the King. So, yeah.
So he doesn't have great royal manners.
No, for sure. But look, as they say, never work with children and animals.
Absolutely. So what does Hefner do typically? This isn't his first rodeo.
No, it's not. So, look, he's been on Sunrise a couple of times. He's been on Bondi Rescue. We've taken him into the Kyle and Jackie O show. He goes to the Easter show each year. But we do a lot of nursing homes and we do a hospice here in Canberra as well. So we're going to go and do that now when we finish here. And, yeah, we just travel around with him, do weddings at the Opera House, whatever. You know, we get a lot of calls for a lot of different things.
And Hefner, can I ask you, how is the King at the top of your list?
Taylor, is Hefner
I'm going to take that as a yes, guys. I'm going to take that as a yes. Hefner is wearing a bow tie. He's wearing a little jacket here, and he's also got a crown. He was ready to meet the King. He was ready to go.
Is Hefner's first name Hugh?
No, his first name is Hefner the alpaca. And what was his mum's name?
His mum's name was Playgirl, so we called him Hefner, but just spelled it a little bit differently to make it his own.
Lovely.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's the story of Hefner the alpaca.
Taylor, hold there, because watch this. You're not seeing it. There's the sneeze. We've got the shot of the Hefner sneezing on the King.
Oh, you did?
It's right there. Yes. We're watching it right now.
He might need some antibacterial.
He did sneeze on the King and we got it on camera.
Excellent. I'm glad.
What a morning, guys. What a morning.
That is fantastic. Well, you're searching out the best interviews there. You keep going, Taylor, and see what you can find. I doubt you're going to trump an alpaca wearing a bow tie.
Named Hefner, whose mother's name was Playgirl.
We were not far off the mark there.
I've now seen and heard it
Well,
all.
Hugh, you know how the tabloids in the UK work. I think they just found their moment.
Yeah, I think we need to sell that shot pretty quick smart.
Yeah. I can't wait to see the headlines about alpaca sneezes on the king. They'll work something out there for sure. Back to the live shots there of the Queen, Camilla, working her way down the line, having a good chat to people. Everyone's gone to the $2 shop, I think, and picked up all the plastic crowns and tiaras that they could find, and they've come out in their finest.
And they're used to this as well. I was with the King and Queen in Berlin last year. It was their first overseas visit, and one burger chain with the initials BK decided to hand out paper crowns at the branch just around the corner from Potsdamer Platz, and all of a sudden there were dozens of people wearing paper crowns. So they're used to this kind of fun.
So if this is the reception that they're receiving in Canberra, how many people are we expecting will be at the Opera House tomorrow afternoon?
Well, I reckon after people see these scenes and how easy it is and how close they can get, I reckon we're talking tens of thousands.
Just have a listen. Great cheering here.
That the King and the Queen will get into.
It's an interesting point, though, Karina and Hugh, because there's very few number plates that are not numbered in Australia. They're all letters, and they are exclusively for the use of the King or the monarch when they're here, but also their representatives in Australia. You may see them in your various states of the fancy-looking executive car rolling around with the crown on the number plate. That means that they are the governor, the governor or the governor general. It's certainly a very rare number plate. The PM uses C1 on most of the vehicles that he travels around in, and if you see that crown, it means it's the monarch or the representative.
Okay, I think that might be an opportunity for us to take a break now, and they will, when we come back, probably be at Parliament House.